We are live. Welcome to my video. This is going to be my thoughts on Young Jedi Adventures, Season 2, Episode 2, The Rustler Roundup / A New Discovery. Let's see, there will be spoilers for the show leading up to and including this episode, possibly even other Star Wars leading up to this, to when this first premiered. And the episode is rated TV-wise 7, I think. So will this video be? Let's see. A lot of the way pretty good episode. At least one major issue with the first half. So as to not be distracted by what I want to say about the second half, because the important stuff here is related to the first half. I'm going to start with the second half because I'm not sure I really have anything particularly negative to say about it, so I'll just note, I forget if we may have seen them before. Maybe I said it another time. I think they're referring to them as Dunnels, the ones they ride. At first I thought, oh, it was like Star Wars horse. I think it's more like, someone went into a Star Wars pet shop and said, I need a horse. I want to make an Arby's sandwich. And we're told, we sell dogs. Then give me one of those large enough to ride. Because, at least some of the behavior seems more dog-like. Let's see. I love the message of, it's important to pay close attention to animals, observe before you act. Like in general, in life, try not to make snap judgments. Snap is a program that's helped quite a lot of people. But yeah, kids can sometimes get overexcited when they see a cute animal and think that the animal, there was a study done that showed, at least one study, that showed that people thought that, I want to say it was zoo animals, that the animals were just as happy about the interactions between the animals and the guests, visitors, I guess, as the visitors were, and that was absolutely not the case, So, yeah, and that goes for a number of adults, so kids, of course, they see a cute animal, they think, oh, the animal wants me to pet it constantly because I want to pet it constantly, kind of thing. That's something you have to learn, either as a kid or teenager or something. I forget, I read it somewhere, but yeah, it's important not to project your own thoughts and feelings onto the object of them, especially if the object is not an object but an actual living, doesn't have to be a person, but just a living thing that perceives, can be an animal. Let's see. Yeah, some good tense stuff with the adventure. I appreciate they actually made it slightly scary at times, like Disney kind of scary, scary for 7-year-olds. The thunderbolt and lightning, very, very frightening, and they almost go off into the vertical tunnel. And I also appreciate there were several times where, the rocks they were standing on would start to crack off, and one point they actually jump off right before it falls off entirely. So, yeah, we're back to, Prince of Persia. I kind of love, I don't know if someone on this show, working on the show, loves Prince of Persia, or they're just taking inspiration from the same. I could imagine there's, a movie that I haven't watched or have forgotten with adventure where, rocks start to crack off, as someone is jumping up, something like that. And it's referencing that. Possibly in Indiana Jones? I feel like that's the kind of thing that would happen there. Anyway, yeah. That brings us to and the thing about, don't just rush in to pet the cute animal. Offer it some food, make sure, observe before you just jump into situations. Yeah, I think the show is really hitting the one theme of, kids have to learn to, not rush into things as just like a general thing a little too much. Overall, I like when they do variations on, like in this one where it's like, okay, there are situations not to rush into, including when you want to pet a cute animal, because that is such a specific thing, and it's not just about, don't rush in, it's about actually look at it, because the animal can't verbally explain to you, what it does or does not want. Yeah, I like that they do manage to get the picture there at the end, and they rush immediately into the next. Yeah, I think that might. Yeah, because a lot of animals. A lot of animals like human children, and a lot of human children like animals. So it's a really good idea to communicate, just because you think it looks cute, yeah. That does cover the second part. So the first, I think I'll just get the stuff that's not super important out of the way. This one also does the oh, don't rush in, Kai gets out his lightsaber and such. I will say I appreciate it. Turns out, yeah, the people he was thinking of like fighting, turns out they're not completely in the wrong. Let's see. I think that does. I thought it was a good misdirect with they're fighting the robots. None of this makes any sense, and it seems like the leader of the Rustlers wakes up, but then apparently it's just the snoring, so she turns her over and falls back asleep. So we think they get away, but then not long after the Rustlers do show up, so she did realize they were there, or I guess woke up very shortly after, maybe, but that was a good little misdirect. I think that might be about it for the stuff that is not super important. Yeah, so, Kai and I am afraid I already forgot. Bell, right? Bell was his name, yeah. They have to go help Mayor Brooks, who, I don't know if he's scruffy looking, but he is a nerf herder. And the episode isn't subtle, and I don't necessarily think it needed to be. I just wish it was more. It handled the sensitive subject more delicately, less centristly. But he is literally like, there are pitchforks. He is encouraging a mob against at least one, a non-zero number of the people he's about to send this mob against is a black woman, and like obviously you shouldn't direct a mob at anyone, but yeah, see, I'm trying to avoid, because I said I was going to make it okay for 7-year-olds. I'll just say there is a history in America, and the show is, not set in America, but made by and for Americans, of mobs being raised against black people, including black women. And yeah, they talk about how, the Nerfs were stolen, and there is some, when the Rustlers laughed at the idea of asking or trading to get the Nerfs, I thought, oh, this might really, they might actually nail it with this one. There are times in the past where they've really nailed stuff on the show. It's just when it gets political, not always the case. But no, it turns out, no, it genuinely is they never thought of that, or they thought they were so sure that the answer would be no, which is like, considering how much this feels like an allegory for 40 acres and a mule, like literally, their ancestors were promised animals for like this kind of farming situation. They didn't get them. They took, a certain action that the people in charge didn't like, and now the people in charge are saying that they're just terrible people. Like, it would be difficult on a kids show to make it more like the whole, let's see. I looked it up because I can never remember these things. Let's see, Reconstruction. I think, I know it's supposed to be right around here. Reconstruction. And yeah, in reality, it wasn't that they, why didn't they just ask, no, they were promised something, and then that promise was rescinded. Yeah. And you could have done it properly, because you didn't have to have the thing of, oh, why didn't they just ask? You could have had it be that, like, the mayor here explains his point of view, and the Jedi immediately point out, no, but that doesn't make sense, though, because they were promised this. And I realize that isn't perfect either, because at that point it's like, well, if Jedi had been around during Reconstruction, it wouldn't have gone down like that. But it would be better. It wouldn't be quite as... Yeah. Like, they come right out and say, oh, the mayor just didn't know these were the people who had been... The Rustlers were the ones who had been promised. He always wanted to meet them, and it just never occurred to him that these might be the actual people that just... Yeah, like, it is bending over backwards to say, white supremacists aren't that bad. No, they just don't realize that the descendants of slaves, were promised something, and then that wasn't delivered on, and now it's had a really, really negative effect for quite a few generations by this point on their ability to really build a life, establish themselves, and yeah. Because that is the thing, like, they could genuinely just have said, okay, so what I would have said, have it be that the Jedi talk to Brooks after talking to the Rustlers, and they're like, you never told us that these were the descendants of the ones who had been promised something. And he says, yeah, but they're not the original ones, though. Why can't they, make a life out of, I think they have enough opportunity, and they could be pointed out, yeah, but you're wrong about that, though, because you built this off the hard labor of the actual slave labor of their ancestors, and then you didn't give them or their descendants anything, and now they're struggling. You have a good life because you took from them. That's not fair. That doesn't seem fair. Like, yeah, honestly, I don't know. Maybe that would be too much for a kid's show, but maybe leave it without it being fully resolved, and just have something of, have it be, they give a speech to the voters and say, next time the mayor is up for an election, think about all the people that he's hurt, and vote for a candidate who's going to try to help them, and just leave it, because that could leave the 7-year-olds watching thinking, when I grow up, I'm going to vote for someone who helps, not hurts. But as it is, this is very, yeah. I think I've said everything that I really had about it. Yeah. I'm... Yeah, this came out before the election. It honestly feels like it could, actually, I guess, if it had come out after, they would probably have made the Rustlers, like, unequivocally the bad guys, and, like, the mayor would be, deporting them to the wrong place, and then really not doing very much to properly get them back. Like, yeah. Anyway, that was it for this one. Yeah. I am not sure I have anything, any good kind of sign-off here. But yeah. Wow, wouldn't it have been something if literally all that they had to do was ask someone who seemed surly, and it would have worked out. Like, yeah. They're gonna show this in schools. This is on the level of, like, American history textbooks.